We're going to move right along. And our next guest is a member of the Pan-African Revolutionary Socialist Party. Her name is Kimberly Joof. Is that correct? Okay. So give her a round of applause. She's going to be speaking on African women on the front line.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I'd like to extend revolutionary greetings from the Pan-African Revolutionary Socialist Party, as well as Africans on the Move. Both are organizations that I am a part of. The PRSP has been in existence since 1983 and is actually an offshoot of the All African People's Revolutionary Party, of which the members were actually members of originally. Africans on the Move is our 501c3 organization that does political work as well as accepts charitable contributions and things like that. I'd like to take this time and congratulate the All African People's Revolutionary Party for 50 years of celebrating African Liberation Day itself in our their advance throughout the country and internationally. It is a wonderful thing. I was asked to come here today to speak about sisters on the front line in the struggle against neocolonialism, and to particularly highlight some current things that have been happening with African women in the forefront. Now, to jump right in and start talking about African women in the forefront currently, I think it does kind of a little disservice. So I do want to look at that great Ghanaian symbol of Senkofa. We've got to look back to our history, see where we were, and bring it back up and look at our present and see how our past has helped to shape us. When we look at the political action of women against neocolonialism, neocolonialism is such an insidious kind of presence by the imperialists against African people, against people of color, against people, period. Neocolonialism is economic exploitation of a nation without direct political control. The sister from AIM earlier talked about how that indirect rule affects you not just physically, but affects you mentally. And that is what is happening to us now. When you look at African women, we are descendants of strong, powerful women. Strong, powerful women who farmed the land in traditional Africa, who tended to the children, prepared the meals, created and led wonderful communities. Our men were hunters and gatherers. They went out, and when they came back, the home front was ready, and together we created a world that existed for us. Was it a perfect world? To us it was. Who is to determine our narrative of what is right and what is best? But we were there, we existed, and we were happy. Then there came the invasion of religion. Religion first, led by the Arabs, and we know in Arab communities, women are repressed. So when the Islamic religion is there and put forth it begins to change the dynamic of how African women are seen and exist within a society. The same thing happened with the Christian Crusades, when the Europeans came in and Christianity is now the religion of the day, and there's a fight with Islam, there's a fight with traditional Africa. And who determines who's the winner of the fight? What is it that you lose in the process? African women, through it all, have been right there with their men in trying to sustain what we know to be right for us and our people. But what has had a greater impact on the lives of African people is imperialist capitalist oppression. Because its aim is to destroy you. Destroy you psychologically, destroy you physically, destroy you socially, to destroy you emotionally, so that you become subservient and the colonizer is there to take over our economy, our resources, ourselves, and we become eternal slaves to them.
Wow.
This terrorism, when you're approached with, what is it that you do? You fight back. You fight back. Because all human beings want to be free. Want to be free of oppression and back to where it was when you experienced that liberation that you had at that one particular time. We are meant to be free as human beings. And women have been right there on the front lines, making certain that we get back what's ours. With the religious wars and Arab invasions, what is it that we do? We fight back. With the Christian Crusades and the advent of Christianity, what is it that we do? We fight back. When we were kidnapped and sold into slavery, what is it that we do? We fight back. When you look at those examples in history, we've got Queen Nzinga in Angola in the 1600s, fighting back against slave invaders. We fight back. The Amazonian women of Benin from the 1600s to the 1800s. What is it that they did? Fight back. That is what we do. Slavery. After we had been kidnapped and taken miles, hundreds of miles to other areas of this world, North America, South America, the Caribbean, Europe. What is it that we did? We fought back. Queen Nanny fought back with the other Africans there in Jamaica, called the Maroons, settled in the Blue Hills, Blue Mountains of Jamaica in the 1730s, created their own Maroon community after fighting against the plantation owners and created their communities, which still exist till today. Women in the Haitian Revolution in the 1790s to 1800s. African women fought alongside and supported their men in the Haitian Revolution, where Toussaint Louverture and Bookman made certain that we are fighting and we are winning. The Haitian Revolution, which the colonizer hated so much, Haiti is still being punished for winning that battle. Carlotta in Cuba, a fierce African woman, who helped to burn down plantations and murdered our own slave owners. We had no problem with fighting back. Harriet Tubman, here in America, understanding what the colonizer has done for us on those plantations and taking us away from our people, helped to free over 300 people, lead them to another area of this nation where you are now considered free. Colonialism in Africa. Colonialism, where you have the colonizer coming in with that direct rule, being present there with you every day, using religion as a weapon to transform your mind, to make you feel that your culture, your language, your actions are not enough. You are now no longer liberated. You are now no longer yourself. Sure, you don't have the shackles that slaves in America and the rest of the world had on your arms and your ankles. Now, I've got your mind. And you're going to do what I want you to do, and because now you want to think and be like me under colonialism. But what did we do? We fought back. Ya Santawa in Ghana in the 1900s fought back. Muhu Musa in Rwanda. Kaizera in Uganda in 1911 fought back against the colonialists who were there trying to take over their countries. When you look at the Black nationalist movement that began here in America, as early as 1914, what is it that we did? Fought back. Fought back. After that period when Emancipation, a proclamation was signed and we supposedly earned our freedom, and we had that little window of time. Yes, that we were granted with that European narrative of our history, yet the great white hope of Abraham Lincoln. You know, during the late 1800s, we actually got our 40 acres and a mule. We actually got it. Africans who were here got that information, became politicians. It was hard for us to vote, but we voted. And we voted Africans into power, and we're there, we're gaining land, we're building communities. And the poor whites who were there struggling, poor, not as smart as we were generally ever, pleaded with the new president and said, here it is, you have all of these blacks, and they have everything now, we have nothing. What is supposed to happen with us? Well, we're going to develop these black codes, you know, we're gonna come up with these Jim Crow laws, and you know what? You can become the police. You go back and you get your land back. And they were sanctioned that it's okay to go back and take what we built. That was the problem. What did we do? We fought back. In 1914, Marcus Garvey came here from Jamaica, got here. He and his wife, his first wife, Amy Ashwood Garvey, helped found the Universal Negro Improvement Association, and it was one of the biggest Back to Africa organizations that have ever been started. Amy Ashwood Garvey, she popularized the Negro World newspaper, which helped spread the information. who helped politically educate Africans on what the whole Back to Africa movement was all about and what Marcus Garvey stood for. In 1922, he now has a new wife, Amy Jace Garvey. At that time, the U.S. saw the popularity of Garvey, what he was doing in terms of now building this mass movement of African people ready, willing to believe in Africa, filled with women, filled with women. She, Amy Jace Garvey, helped popularize and preserve everything that Marcus Garvey believed in. She oversaw the UNIA's daily activity while he had been deported. 10 years later, in 1932, Mittie Maud Lena Gordon, a former UNIA member, established the Peace Movement of Ethiopia. She organized over 300,000 people, starting in Chicago, transversing across the country, about going back to Africa. A year later, she was joined by Cecilia Jane Allen. Cecilia Jane Allen helped build an immigration campaign by signing up 400,000 African people to sign a petition to get us back to Africa. All of these 400,000 people were ready to pack up and leave America and go back to Africa. She took the petitions and went to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt and said, you have your New Deal program. Here is our petition to relocate us back to Africa, and we'd like your funding. Unfortunately, that funding did not happen. Imagine how much different our world would be if it had. In Africa, in the 1950s, over 20,000 women in South Africa protested the apartheid pass laws. 20,000 women. Imagine getting 20,000 women today to protest something. We see with that women's march that happened about 4 years back, it is definitely possible. The Federation of South African Women were organized, and they had demonstrations and a full campaign of defiance of unjust laws. They actively participated in what became the Sharpsville massacre, where thousands of South Africans were killed. And in 1994, hundreds of years after colonization, they finally gained their independence and were part of the mass movement that overturned apartheid. In 1960, we have Kwame Nkrumah's development of Ghana's All-African Women's Conference that happened. The CPP relied heavily, the Convention People's Party relied heavily on women in the urban and rural areas, and Nkrumah is quoted as saying, women were some of the most able and devoted to the struggle. In the rest of Africa, we've got the women who fought in Guinea-Bissau, with PAIGC, Mozambique, Angola, and Angola women even told their men, you get no sex here, buddy, unless when you get out of this thing, you pick up that rifle and you go out and you fight. In Zimbabwe, the Zimbabwe guerrilla movement was really strong in the fight against colonization. And in the 1980s, women became a part of that. They were active by taking up arms, being trained by the guerrilla militia, formed the women's wing of ZANU, the Zimbabwe African Nationalist Union, patriotic front and fought alongside the men for national liberation. Their history of struggle is expressed in their Chimaranga songs.
All right.
But the Chimaranga songs were all about the work of the men being warriors. But by the women becoming part of the liberation movement, they were able to develop their own narrative and be a presence in that history of the liberation movement in the Chimaranga songs. In the Black nationalist movement here, we have many women who fought back. Betty Lou Hamer, Rosa Parks, Catherine Cleaver, Angela Davis, Ashada Shakur, women of revolutionary organizations, APRP, PRSP. When you look at what it is that women are doing, it may not always be out there with guns. Women are creating their own movements where they're talking about the repressive practices that are upon us and what it is that we need to do to change that. Tarana Burke, founder of the Me Too movement, the African Me Too movement that is all about survivors of sexual violence and repression, especially Black women and girls from low wealth communities. In 2013, 3 sisters created the Black Lives Matter movement, and they came out to speak about, they started when Trayvon Martin was killed by that racist white vigilante down in Florida, and now they have over 40 chapters throughout the world looking at and mobilizing people against violence inflicted on Africans and state-sanctioned violence. The women in Algeria played an important role in the war for independence. From 1954 to 1962, these women planted bombs, served as spies, acted as informants who would relay information back to fighters once they got it. In 1956 in Tunisia, Tunisian women in 1956, before their revolution, were actually granted unprecedented rights. Rights for Muslim women were very repressive, but Tunisian women were given the right to vote. They were allowed to be elected to parliament. They were paid equal wages, and they had access to education. This wasn't the same for everyone else. So they were already primed and ready when their revolution for independence actually started. And very crucial in paving the way for them to participate in it. And in 2011, they ousted their president, Ben Ali, and forced him into exile. In 2011, the women in Cairo, Egypt, were part of the Arab Spring. Those protesters, over 50% of them were women. And at that point, there in Tahrir Square, they said that we have to set aside the idea that men and women should behave differently when it comes to the revolution. When we have to fight, one journalist is saying, we fought as women. When we had to hurl stones, we as women hurled stones. When we had to shout slogans, that's what we did. We shouted slogans. We did whatever was necessary for women to be a part of the revolution to gain our liberation, and that was to oust Mubarak at the time. Now, the latest one has happened within the past 5 months or so. In the Sudan, in Khartoum, President Bashir, who came into power as a person who might be able to help Sudan, Well, some of his practices became very, very repressive. And the one that, a lot of the practices were repressive. Women for violating dress codes, for wearing trousers, for showing their hair, for riding in the cars with males, they were punished with flogging, and that's lashes. And this is as recently as the past 5 months. Women who protested and participated in demonstrations, over 15,000, had been flogged for doing that. There was one, they took those floggings and they still continue. They took the beatings, they still continue. When Bashir said, we're going to raise the cost of bread, they said, oh no, now you're really hitting at me taking care of my home. And the masses came out in throngs, went and demonstrated before the military that was responsible for extolling all of the punishment on them. And one young woman got up, dressed in traditional dress. She didn't have on trousers, nothing was exposed. She was covered up. She's standing there looking like her female predecessors. She stood on top of a car and said, this is our revolution. This is our revolution. It starts right now. We will not stand for this. We're not taking it anymore. Yeah. And the masses supported her, held her highly, and Allah Salah. You can look her up on YouTube. She is responsible for being that iconic figure that pushes the Sudanese revolution at this time even forward. As we look around the world at the conflicts that have occurred in Sudan, in Egypt, in many other places in Africa, definitely in Iraq, in Iran, in Syria, and the rest of the world, we know that there's strong resistance. But when you look at what it is that we do, what it is that we want, and how we go about it, you see women who are now being pushed off over into refugee camps and things like that. So this helps to squelch our movement. Right. When you look at what it is that women can and should be able to fight for, it's that neo-colonial mentality that helps to kind of keep us down, right, and keep us distracted by other things, as opposed to the full liberation of ourselves. The U.S. and other Western imperialists continue to create these conflicts in our areas. Position leaders in place. Make certain that we're going for that whole equality piece. It's not about us being equal. It's about us gaining power, gaining back our power to be truly liberated. So here it is. When you talk about sisters on the front line and what it is that we do, who are we? We are strong, powerful, intelligent, supportive, caring, and loving women, descendants of a wise and powerful nation in Africa, committed to reclaiming our liberation. How do we do it? We fight back. How do we fight back? We fight back valiantly. We love and nurture our families. We push political education. We protest. We demonstrate. We boycott. We write. We spy. We pick up arms. We throw stones. We throw bombs. We kill the enemy. We destroy the enemy. We join others to fight against oppression of our bodies and our minds. So what now? We, one, recognize capitalist oppression as our enemy.
Yeah.
That is our enemy. Capitalist oppression, whether it's neocolonialism, whether it's racism, whether it's sexism, whatever it is capitalist imperialist oppression.
Yeah.
That is what we fight against. Number two, we recognize that Pan-Africanism is the only solution for us. Pan-Africanism is the only solution for us. And what is Pan-Africanism? The liberation of Africa, the unification of Africa. And every nation must have an economic system, and that economic system for us is scientific socialism. That is what we fight against. How do we go about it? We join a revolutionary organization. That's what we do. And when we are a part of that revolutionary organization, we make sure our political education is rooted in Pan-Africanism because we are African people. We understand and know our history, and we become proud of our history. We create our own schools with a Pan-African curriculum. We become united. We speak monolithically. We act monolithically. And we should not be ashamed to be that, to be one, to be united. We deal with traitors that betray the revolution. We have to learn and know our enemy, understand imperialism in all of its forms. Watch for those foreigners, those fakers, and those fools who want to distract us. Gain access to power over our land and our resources. Be productive. Understand technology because it's the wave of the understand business, and we start our own, the whole buy black and deal with ourselves. No, I only have one.
Oh, keep going. Go for it, please.
So now, here it is. In the past, we thought integration was our greatest need and equality was justice for us. Right now, we have what we fought for. We got equality, but we're not free. We're not really independent. And we think we are, but every time we think we're equal to our colonizer, we get pushed back just a little bit more. Power is not based on what we know. Power is based on us getting our land back, us being united, us moving forward with a Pan-African agenda. Kwame Nkrumah says, a state in the grip of neocolonialism is not, NOT, not master of its own destiny. We are in a colonial state now, all of us. We are not in control of our destiny. It's time that we fight back stronger, and move forward.